The locker room smelled of antiseptic and damp fabric, that strange mix of sweat and disinfectant that never quite faded no matter how often the floors were scrubbed. The echoes of the game still rang in my head, the shouts, the whistle, the sickening crack when Noah hit the ground. I'd replayed that moment too many times already, the way his leg twisted at the wrong angle, the silence that fell over the crowd. Now, 2 days later, Coach Daniels stood in front of me, his tone clipped but weary. "Ethan, he doesn't have anyone around. Go check on him. Make sure he's okay until the team physio gets back from Chicago." It wasn't really a request. I nodded, though my mind was still tangled with guilt. I should have passed the ball sooner. Maybe he wouldn't have collided like that. Maybe he wouldn't be alone in that small apartment with a broken leg and no company but the muted drone of the television. When I knocked on Noah's door that evening, it took a full minute before I heard the shuffle of crutches and the soft click of the lock. He opened it halfway, leaning on one crutch, hair messy and eyes a little glazed. He was wearing a loose hoodie, one sleeve pushed up, revealing a bruise the color of old wine along his arm. "Coach sent you, huh?" His tone carried that half-smile he always wore after a game, equal parts charm and self-deprecation. "Yeah," I said. "Just checking in." "Come in, man. I promise I won't bite." Inside, the place was surprisingly neat. A single couch faced the TV, empty takeout boxes stacked on the counter. The air smelled faintly of coffee and that sterile scent of pain medication. He limped toward the couch, waved off my help at first, then winced when his crutch caught on the rug. I steadied him by instinct. His hand gripped my shoulder for balance, warm, calloused, firm. For a moment, our eyes met, and something in the silence between us felt heavier than it should. That he cleared his throat. "Thanks. Guess I'm still getting used to being useless." "You're not useless," I said. "Just, grounded for now." He laughed softly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Grounded. I like that." I didn't stay long that night. I made sure his meds were lined up, his water bottle filled, the remote within reach. Still, when I left, I caught myself glancing back at the door before it closed. Over the next few days, I kept coming back. Sometimes after practice, sometimes on my way home. Noah always acted surprised, though I knew he expected me by now. He'd insist he was fine, that I didn't need to babysit, but then he'd hand me a mug and tell me to stay a while anyway. By the fourth visit, we'd fallen into a rhythm. I'd cook something simple, eggs, pasta, soup, and he'd talk. Mostly about the team, the game, his frustration at being sidelined. But every now and then, he'd ask about me. About my family, my plans after the season. Things no one on the team ever asked. "You ever think about quitting?" he asked once, his voice quiet as rain. "Quitting?" "Yeah. Just walking away. Doing something else." I thought about it. About how often I'd wondered if this was really my path or just something I'd fallen into because I was good at it. Sometimes, I admitted. But I don't know who I'd be without it. He nodded slowly, like he understood that more than I meant him to. After that night, our talks grew longer, stretching into the early hours. Sometimes we'd just sit in silence while the TV played low. There was something easy about being there, something that didn't need filling with words. Yet beneath that quiet comfort, something else stirred, a faint pull I didn't want to name. Lucas texted me more than usual during that week. "You coming over tonight? You okay?" I'd type half a response, then erase it. How could I explain that I was fine, just, somewhere else? One evening, as I was about to leave, Noah said, "You don't have to rush off every time, you know. I don't want to overstay my welcome." "You couldn't if you tried." He smiled, but it wasn't playful this time, it was soft, almost hesitant. "Stay for dinner. I've got frozen pizza, and you can criticize my cooking." I hesitated. I told myself it was harmless. Just two teammates having dinner. Still, my pulse quickened. The pizza was terrible, burnt at the edges and half frozen in the middle, but Noah laughed so hard when I pretended to enjoy it that I found myself laughing too. It felt easy. Real. Something in the air between us loosened, warmed. When I stood to leave, he tried to get up too quickly, nearly lost his balance. I caught him again, arms around his waist this time. His breath hitched, just a fraction. For a heartbeat, we were too close, his face inches from mine, the smell of soap and faint cologne between us. I felt his hand press lightly against my chest, not pushing away, just steadying himself. Then he smiled, small and tired. Guess I still need you around a bit longer. I let go and stepped back. Yeah, I said quietly. Guess so. Driving home, the streetlights blurred in the rain. Lucas called once, I didn't answer. I told myself I was just helping a friend. That the warmth in my chest was just concern, that the thought of Noah's smile was just sympathy, but later that night, lying in the dark, my mind wouldn't stop replaying the way his fingers had brushed my arm, the sound of his laugh, the way the silence had felt almost too full to bear. That I started seeing him more often after that. Sometimes we didn't even talk about the team anymore. We talked about small things, music, movies, the kind of life we'd want if the world didn't demand so much of us. It was simple. Honest. It shouldn't have meant anything, yet one afternoon, as I adjusted the brace on his leg, he winced and gripped my wrist. His fingers lingered there, his eyes searching mine. The air between us stilled, fragile and heavy. I'm sorry, he murmured. For what? For needing you this much. I didn't know what to say. His voice wasn't flirtatious or manipulative, it was raw, almost ashamed. Something in me ached at the honesty of it. I wanted to tell him it was fine, that I didn't mind, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I just nodded, and he looked away. When I left that day, I told myself it was the last time I'd go over. I even meant it. But as I walked down the dim hallway, his voice followed me, soft, uncertain. Ethan, next time, maybe stay for dinner again? I turned, met his eyes, and hesitated for just a second too long. Yeah, I said. Next time. And as the door closed behind me, I realized I was already thinking about what I'd say when I went back. The storm that night came without warning, sheets of rain hammering the windows, wind rattling the balcony railings of Noah's apartment. I had stopped by with groceries and clean bandages, expecting another quiet evening. But as soon as I stepped inside, I sensed a change in the air. The TV was off, the lights dimmed to a warm amber glow, and Noah sat on the couch, leg propped up, staring at nothing in particular. You're early, he said softly, eyes flicking toward me. Practice ended early, I replied, setting the bag on the counter. Figured you could use dinner that doesn't come from a microwave. He smiled faintly but didn't move. I unpacked in silence, canned soup, bread, the same things I always brought, but my attention kept drifting to him. He wasn't his usual self, that effortless confidence he carried replaced by something fragile. When I handed him his bowl, he didn't take it. You ever feel like the world forgets about you when you stop moving? I hesitated, sitting beside him. Sometimes, I said. But it remembers again when you're ready. He exhaled through his nose, a laugh with no humor. Yeah. If you're lucky. The rain thickened, drowning the room in a low, constant murmur. For a long time, we said nothing. It wasn't uncomfortable, just quiet in a way that made every small sound feel intimate. The scrape of the spoon, the rhythm of our breathing. Then Noah spoke again. I didn't tell you the worst part about the injury. His voice was low, deliberate. It's not just the pain. It's the thought that maybe I'll never play the same again. That this might be the end of everything I built. I turned to face him, his eyes shadowed beneath the soft light. You will. You're too stubborn not to. He smiled weakly. You really think that? I know it. For a second, he looked at me as if testing whether I meant it. Then he nodded and leaned back. You're good at saying the right thing, Ethan. I don't think anyone's ever really seen me past the jersey before. That line stayed with me longer than it should have. Over the next few days, we spent more time together than we probably should have. The rain didn't stop, and I used it as an excuse: roads too slick, traffic too heavy, to stay longer. We watched old movies, traded stories about childhood. He'd tell me about growing up near the coast, about sneaking out to surf before dawn. I'd tell him about my small hometown, about how silence used to comfort me until lately it started to feel like absence, that he listened, really listened. And that was the danger. Lucas noticed the shift almost immediately. His texts came more frequently, his tone sharper. "You're distant lately. Everything okay? You're spending a lot of time with him, huh?" I told him what I told myself, that it was just helping a teammate. But each lie left a strange taste in my mouth, something metallic and restless. One night, after another long conversation with Noah, I stood to leave. He reached for his crutch but winced, breath catching as pain shot through his leg. Instinctively, I knelt beside him, steadying the brace. My hands brushed his skin, warm beneath the bandage. When I looked up, he was already watching me. "I'm fine," he murmured, though he didn't pull away. His fingers rested on my shoulder, light but deliberate, that I could hear the storm outside again, thunder rolling through the walls. My heart beat faster than it should have. I forced a smile, adjusting the strap carefully. "You'll heal faster if you stop pretending you're indestructible." "Maybe," he said quietly. "But what if I don't want to be healed just yet?" I didn't understand what he meant until I saw the look in his eyes, something unguarded, dangerously sincere. My breath caught. "Noah," he leaned forward slightly, close enough that I could feel his breath on my cheek. "You don't have to say anything," he whispered. "I just needed you to know." The space between us collapsed before I could think. His lips brushed mine, hesitant at first, then certain. It wasn't fire or impulse, it was something gentler, sadder, like the confession of a feeling he'd been carrying too long. I froze, torn between instinct and want, then pulled back, pulse pounding. "I can't," I said, voice rough. He nodded, eyes downcast. "I know." The silence after felt heavier than any thunder. I stood abruptly, muttered something about leaving, and fled into the rain without an umbrella. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every second, the way his voice trembled, the warmth of his skin, the way part of me had wanted to stay. I thought about Lucas, about the loyalty I owed him, and hated myself for how hollow the word loyalty suddenly felt. The next morning, I ignored Noah's messages. Then the next. But by the third day, I found myself outside his door again, telling myself I just needed to make sure he was okay. When he opened it, he didn't look surprised. "I didn't think you'd come back," he said softly. "I shouldn't have." "But you did." I didn't answer. We just stood there, the space between us filled with everything we hadn't said. Days blurred after that. We found a new rhythm, quieter but charged. Sometimes our hands would brush when I helped him move, and neither of us would comment. Sometimes I'd stay later than planned, and the air would thicken with everything we pretended not to feel. That it wasn't about the kiss anymore, it was about the connection that kept growing in the spaces between words. One evening, as I packed up to leave, Noah asked, "Do you ever feel like you're living two different lives?" I paused. "Every day." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe we're more alike than I thought." He handed me his phone then, fingers brushing mine. His screen lit up briefly, revealing a message, someone else's name, a hint of his own secrets. For a moment, I realized I wasn't the only one crossing lines. It should have made it easier, but somehow it didn't. When I finally stepped outside, the air was cool and clean, the storm gone. My phone buzzed. It was Lucas again. "We need to talk. I'm coming over tomorrow." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Okay." The next evening, I told Noah about it. His expression tightened, worry flickering across his face. "Do you want me to not be here?" he asked. "I don't know what I want," I admitted. He nodded, glancing toward the window. "Then maybe you should figure it out before it's too late." His words hung between us, fragile and unfinished. I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, he said softly, "For what it's worth, I don't regret what happened." I froze. Even if you do, he added. When I looked back, his eyes met mine, steady, unashamed, and unbearably sad. Outside, thunder rumbled again somewhere in the distance, as if the storm hadn't really ended after all. I closed the door behind me, heart pounding, and realized that whatever came next, none of us would walk away unchanged. Lucas arrived on a Sunday afternoon, earlier than he said he would. I was still at Noah's apartment, finishing up his meal prep before heading out. The doorbell startled us both. For a second, I didn't move. Noah looked at me, understanding flashing in his eyes. You should answer it, he said quietly. When I opened the door, Lucas stood there, rain dripping from his jacket, his smile thin and uncertain. Hey, he said. You didn't tell me you'd be here. I was just leaving, I replied, stepping aside. That he glanced past me, toward the couch where Noah sat with his leg elevated, and something in his expression hardened, just a flicker, but enough. Didn't know you were still babysitting. Noah's voice was calm, steady. I appreciate the help. It's been rough keeping up. Lucas nodded, polite but distant. Sure. I get it. Then he turned back to me. Can we talk? Alone? I hesitated, but Noah gave me a small nod, a silent cue to go. I followed Lucas down the hall, the silence between us thick with things neither of us wanted to name. Once outside, he leaned against his car, arms crossed. So, he began. How long has this been going on? What? He met my gaze. Don't do that, Ethan. You've been off for weeks. You don't call back. You don't look at me the same way. I'm not stupid. I swallowed hard, rain cooling my skin. It's not what you think. Then what is it? His voice cracked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're falling for someone else. I didn't have an answer. The silence stretched until it said everything I couldn't. Lucas laughed once, bitterly. That's what I thought. He got into his car and shut the door before I could stop him. The sound of the engine drowned out everything else. I stood there long after he drove away, the rain soaking through my clothes, my heart beat a hollow echo in my chest. When I went back upstairs, Noah didn't ask what happened. He could tell. He just looked at me, his expression soft but unreadable. I'm sorry, he said, it's not your fault. I lied. That he hesitated, then said, maybe not. But I didn't make it easier for you, either. The apartment was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. I sat down, running a hand over my face. He's gone, I said finally. And I don't know what happens now. Noah sighed. You heal. That's what happens. He tried to smile, but it faltered halfway. I realized then how tired he looked, how the strain of everything, his recovery, my presence, the guilt we both carried, had begun to wear him down too. I think you should stop coming here for a while, he said gently. The words hit harder than I expected. You're serious? He nodded. You've done enough. More than you should have. I can handle the rest. I wanted to argue, to tell him that leaving would make things worse, not better. But deep down, I knew he was right. The more time we spent together, the less I recognized where care ended and something else began. So I left. The first few days were strange, quiet in a way that felt unnatural. My phone stayed on the nightstand, silent except for the occasional message from Coach Daniels checking in about practice. Lucas didn't call. And Noah, he didn't either. I threw myself into training, showing up early, staying late, pretending that exhaustion was the same as peace. It wasn't. Every empty evening stretched longer than the last. A week later, during drills, I saw Noah at the edge of the field. He wasn't supposed to be walking yet, but there he was, limping steadily with his crutch, watching us. When our eyes met, something in my chest twisted. After practice, I found him waiting by the bleachers. You shouldn't be out here, I said. That he shrugged. Couldn't stay away forever. Thought I'd see how the team's doing. The team's fine. And you? I hesitated. Getting there. He smiled faintly. Good. For a moment, neither of us moved. The sun was low, the sky painted in fading gold. The air between us carried that same quiet energy, but this time it felt calmer, like the edge of a storm after it's passed. "I wanted to thank you," he said finally. "For everything. You didn't have to take care of me the way you did." I shook my head. "You don't have to thank me." "Maybe not," he said. "But I should. You reminded me what it feels like to be seen, even when I didn't deserve it." The words lingered. I wanted to say something back, something that would make it easier, or make sense of what had happened between us, but nothing came. Some things couldn't be named without breaking them. He adjusted his crutch and looked past me toward the field. "I'll be back on the team soon. Coach thinks I can start light drills next month." "That's good," I said quietly. "You'll kill it out there." He laughed softly. "We'll see." When he turned to leave, I caught myself wanting to stop him. To tell him that I missed him, that despite everything, a part of me still did. But instead, I just said, "Take care of yourself, Noah." He paused, half-turned, his expression unreadable. "You too, Ethan." Then he walked away. The following weeks passed in a blur. Lucas never called again, though I caught glimpses of him online sometimes, new photos, new places. Maybe he'd already found someone who could give him the steadiness I couldn't. Noah returned to practice at the start of the next month. He moved differently now, careful but confident. When we crossed paths in the locker room, we exchanged polite nods, nothing more. Still, there was a quiet understanding there, something unspoken that didn't need words. That we never talked about what happened. Maybe that was for the best. Sometimes, after practice, I'd linger on the field a little longer, watching the light fade behind the stands. The world felt heavier and lighter all at once, emptier, but clearer. I realized then that what happened between Noah and me wasn't about betrayal, not entirely. It was about timing, about two people who found each other in a moment of weakness and mistook recognition for destiny. One night, alone in my apartment, I replayed it all in my head: the first knock on his door, the laughter, the silence, the rain. I thought about how love doesn't always arrive in the right shape or moment, how sometimes it just brushes against your life long enough to change its direction. "They told me to watch over him," I whispered into the dark. "They never said it would change me." And maybe that was the truth of it, that caring for someone can blur into something dangerous, that love and guilt can look almost identical when viewed from too close. The next morning, when I passed Noah in the hallway before practice, he smiled at me, a small, quiet smile that said everything neither of us could. I smiled back, and for the first time in weeks, it didn't hurt.